it's going to be all the plaintiffs. We might have to. Yeah, we're going to put it.
You should put it. Actually, you probably in the middle, right?
Yeah.
You guys figure out what works.
Y podemos como para ti. Quieres sentar al lado de él y con ella en el otro lado. Porque la única cosa es que no se sentar al lado de al lado de él. Porque lo más difícil es.
Creo que sí. Voy a así de facilidad.
Puedes cambiar cuando ella.
No, y sí, lo que es importante es que sienten que soy la sí. Yo decía hay muchas cosas que no se van a escuchar.
Tendré que sacarlo.
Yo puedo sacar.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Howard Cooper. I'm a partner in the Boston law firm Todd & Weld, which is located in the building that we're in. There's going to be a number of lawyers who will be speaking this afternoon who will introduce themselves and their law firms as they begin talking. But these are the lawyers who have come together to file a complaint in our federal court on behalf of the individual class representatives who are seated to my left and who were referred to in the complaint as KO, EO, and FC as their parents of the class of children who were separated from their families at the border. The lawsuit is about accountability. It's about holding accountable public officials who intentionally set up a practice of inflicting trauma on children and their families at the border in order to deter lawful immigration. The plaintiffs are bringing this lawsuit in order to recover damages, but first and foremost, to require the defendants to pay for the harm that they've caused, in particular the suffering that they've caused in the children who have been experiencing a variety of emotional trauma. The idea being that the defendants will be responsible for funding mental health monitoring and services as these children grow and suffer the impact of the treatment that they receive. The lawsuit also seeks emotional distress damages on behalf of each child who's a member of the proposed class. So the format this afternoon is going to be a few of the lawyers are going to make some brief remarks, and then a couple of the named plaintiffs will make some remarks and then answer a few questions. And thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Morecki. I'm an attorney at Nixon P. everybody in our Boston office, and I think everybody's very proud to help represent these plaintiffs seek justice for these practices and the harm it's caused the roughly 2,500 children who have been harmed by such practice. The lawsuit has three categories of remedies sought from various causes of action. The first of these remedies is for constitutional violations by members of the United States government. They've infringed upon numerous constitutional rights, including substantive due process rights to family integrity, freedom from criminal punishment of civil detainees, freedom from coerced waivers of rights, the right to receive adequate mental health services while in civil detention, procedural due process, equal protection. The second of these categories is class members seek compensatory damages for the individual defendant's conspiracy to interfere with the plaintiff's civil rights. That conspiracy was motivated by discriminatory animus based on race and class, and it's a violation of sections 1985 and 1986 Title 2 of the United States Code. The third set of remedies is under the Federal Tort Claims Act. We're separately seeking those claims through the administrative process and will become part of the suit. We're seeking damages for mental distress, anguish, trauma, and other damages caused by the United States government officials' forcible separation of children from their parents.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Joseph Case, and I'm an attorney at Todd & Well, also representing the plaintiffs who have joined us here today before you. We're very proud and honored to be representing them and seeking justice on their behalf in this important case. As you all are no doubt aware, there have been a number of cases filed already on the family separation issue, basically all of which are geared toward family reunification. They're seeking injunctive relief and declaratory relief, and we believe this to be the first case of its kind that's seeking damages, particularly on a class-wide basis. Some of the claims have already been recognized very clearly by other federal courts who have granted injunctive relief, in particular on the substantive due process right to family integrity, and we are confident that we will be able to achieve justice and get the remedies that our clients and the entire class of children that have been impacted by this horrendous practice have suffered. So we are again very, very proud and honored to be a part of this lawsuit and seeking that important relief to help get some justice for these children who have been brutalized at the hands of defendants. Thank you.
Could you please spell your first and last name for us as well before speaking?
So the first name is Joseph, Joseph. Last name is Case, that's C-A-C-A-C-E. And I'm an attorney at Todd & Well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Church. I'm an attorney at Demesday & Church Law Firms. That's spelled D-E-M-I-S-S-I-E and Church, C-H-O-R-C-H. I am here to talk to you about the background of these families, and they represent a class of people who have been treated so inhumanely, so cruelly, and so inconsistently with the principles of this country that this lawsuit has been filed on their children's behalf to seek redress for the damages that their children suffered. One of the families is entitled in the complaint FC and CJ. Seated at the table here today is the father of an 11-year-old boy. When they were taken into custody by Customs and Border Patrol officers, they were so freezing cold that the father held his son all night long while the son shivered to make sure that the son was able to get a good night's sleep while the father stayed awake. The child was hungry, so the father gave the child his food to eat so that the child would not go hungry. He did everything he could to protect his son, which is why he came to this country in the first place, because his son's life and his life was in severe danger. What did the government do to this father who was so desperate to protect his child, to keep his child safe? They took him away. They took the father to court, never brought him back. A father has described this incident as a feeling of death, of a kidnapping, that he brought his child here to save his child from a kidnapping, and that the government kidnapped the child anyway. The second family, which is again representative of a class of people who have suffered immeasurably under this administration's practice, is a 17-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. The 17-year-old watched helplessly as government officials said to the mother, "Your child's being taken from you, she's going to be adopted, and you will be deported." Immediately after that, shortly after that, the child was taken physically from the mother while the mother screamed. And the 17-year-old banged on the window of the room that he was in, trying to get them to stop taking her away. As you can guess, all of these children will and do suffer psychiatric consequences as a result of this treatment. These children suffer from nightmares. They chew their fingernails till they bleed. They fall out of bed at night because they are startled awake from fear. This lawsuit is being brought so that we don't have to see what happens to these children 20 years from now when they have suffered this trauma and it's never been redressed. These are individuals without sufficient access to medical care, to health care, to anything, and this lawsuit is brought to try to prevent more tragedy than it already has. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Bless. Represent Jeff Goldman Immigration. That's JESSEBLESS. Like Susan and many of the public and those here today, I've represented a number of families who've dealt with the separation crisis under the government's policy of zero tolerance. It's an honor to be a member of this team because now it's our turn to demonstrate zero tolerance. And we're not going to tolerate the damage to these children. And that's the reason we are spearheading this effort on behalf of the brave and courageous parents and children, the real victims here. And we're going to see this through. Thank you for being here again. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Iván Espinosa Madrigal. I am the Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. The Lawyers Committee is proud to join forces with Todd and Well, with Nixon Peabody, with the Mises Church, and with the Law Office of Jeff Goldman to bring justice forth for the brave and courageous families sitting here with us today. As a Latino immigrant myself, who arrived in this country when I was 9 years old, brought here by my single mother, I identify very closely with the incredible courage that these families have had to seek refuge in the United States. And I also identify with the pain and suffering. I can't even imagine the harrowing experience that they must have had to be able to reach our border, let alone what the federal government has done to them. A violation clearly of our constitutional rights and the basic human decency. This case, the first one in the country to be filed as a class action on behalf of affected children, is being brought by a coalition of law firms and organizations to be able to improve the lives and secure the well-being of children across the country that are affected. We are talking specifically about children from Central and South American families, children from war-torn and deeply impoverished countries that are fleeing to our border, and they were specifically selected for this brutality based on their race and national origin. That is not only illegal, it is despicable. And through this lawsuit, we will secure the resources that these families desperately need to secure their well-being and mental health. Thank you for joining us today, and we will be hearing from the families directly.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre Anónimo FC.
Good afternoon to everybody. My pseudonym is FC.
Estoy aquí porque he sido víctima de la ley cero tolerancia.
I'm here because I've been a victim of the policy of zero tolerance.
Y para mí pues ha sido muy difícil el hecho de entrar a este país.
For me, it was very difficult entering this country.
Cuando me entregué a migración, pues fui separado de mi hijo.
When I came into it, when I turned myself into immigration, I was separated from my child, my son.
Donde es muy difícil soportar y saber de que con engaños le quitan a uno a su hijo.
It's hard to accept that my child was taken from me with deceptive statements.
Y sin saber pues si algún día uno los va a volver a ver.
Not knowing whether someday I was going to see him again.
Y estoy aquí también porque el gobierno dice que hay justicia.
I'm here also because the government says there is justice.
Ahora yo por eso estoy aquí para pedir justicia contra el gobierno.
And I'm here today to ask the government for justice.
Porque ha causado mucho daño a mi hijo y a mí personalmente.
Because I have suffered much damage myself and my child.
Porque el hecho de que me haya separado de mi hijo, mi corazón se ha destrozado mucho.
The fact of separating me from my child has destroyed my heart.
Y cuando pues me dijeron que mi hijo iba a tener seguridad,
When they told me that my child would be safe,
me doy cuenta que mi hijo fue golpeado por otro niño que fue separado también de su padre.
I learned that my child had been struck by another child who had been separated from his family.
Entonces, ¿a dónde está esa seguridad que me dijeron?
So where is that security that was promised?
Ahora yo sigo sufriendo junto a mi hijo porque sigo pensando en lo mismo.
I continue to suffer with my child and thinking about that whole experience.
Porque tenemos un sufrimiento de un trauma donde el gobierno nos ha causado ese daño.
We are still suffering with a trauma that was caused us by the government.
Porque mi hijo sigue teniendo esa pesadilla y yo también.
My child continues to suffer with the nightmares, I as well.
Mi hijo pues se levanta a 10 horas de la noche soñando 3 o hasta 4 veces en barranca de la cama.
My child is waking in the night and falling out of bed 3 times, 4 times every night.
Al siguiente día yo le pregunto que qué es lo que pasó y él me dice, el niño me viene siguiendo.
And I asked him the next morning as he wakes up what happened, what was going on, and he said, I was being chased by that child.
O sea que yo no vivo, no pasé eso. Yo pasé eso dentro del periodo que estuve separado de mi hijo y sigo viviéndolo.
So I lived that during the time I was separated from my child, and I continue to live with that trauma.
Entonces ahora lo que quiero es justicia, pido justicia porque aquí el gobierno dice que hay justicia, ahora pido justicia para el gobierno por el daño causado.
So I ask for justice. The government says there is justice. I ask for justice for the damage that has been caused.
Eso es todo. Gracias.
Just for the sake of audio, could the translator also speak up into the microphone when you're translating, please?
Buenas tardes, abogados, periodistas, personas aquí presentes.
Good afternoon, attorneys, reporters, other people present.
Para mí es muy doloroso
What I need to tell you is very painful.
hablar de lo que me hicieron acá en Estados Unidos cuando yo entré.
To talk about what happened, what was done to me when I came entering the country,
Por venir huyendo de la delincuencia,
because I was fleeing violence.
fui víctima de la ley que Trump ya tenía en esos días.
I was a victim of the policies that Trump imposed in that era.
Cuando entré acá, migración me agarró
When
con mis dos hijos.
When I entered the country, I and my 2 children were detained.
Pero nunca pensé ni pasó por mi mente que me iban a separar de mis dos hijos.
It never even occurred to me, never even crossed my mind that I was going to be separated from my kids.
De una forma muy drástica, muy dura, porque yo sé que aquí hay madres, aquí hay padres, y no les gustaría que les quitaran a sus hijos.
In a way that was very abrupt and hurtful. I know there are other parents here, mothers and fathers, and they would not want that to happen to their children.
La forma que me los quitaron.
The way they were taken from me.
Mi hijo tiene 17 años,
My son is 17 years old.
mi nena 9 años,
My girl is just 9.
a ella no lo vi desde cuando me lo quitaron, cuando me llevaron ahí.
I didn't see her from the time we were taken.
Y luego a mi nena, se podría decir 8 horas después, me la quitaron. Ella me agarraba y me decía, no mami. Y yo les preguntaba a ellos por qué me quitaban a mi niña y ella me abrazaba y no me soltaba y yo igual a ella.
8 hours after taking my son, they took my daughter, and she would look at me and say, no, Mom. And would hug me and say, don't let them take you away.
Y luego yo les preguntaba a ellos que por qué hacían eso, por qué nos estaban quitando a nuestros hijos.
I asked them why they were doing this to us, why they were taking our children.
Y ellos dijeron que ellos era su trabajo para que sufriéramos, que nosotros los fuimos a regalar, a entregárselos, que ellos iban a ser adoptados por otras personas.
They told us they were doing this to punish us, that they were taking the children and that they would be given an adoption to other families.
Y me quitaron a mi niña de la cintura, la fueron a meter a donde ellos estaban en las hieleras.
They pulled my daughter from my waist and went and took her to the ice box.
Y yo le preguntaba por qué ellos me dijeron que no les quitara el tiempo, que caminara. Y yo volteaba a ver, mi niña pegaba gritos donde la tenía.
When I asked them where they were taking her, they said, don't waste our time, and I would look over and watch them taking my daughter.
Y yo le dije que quería ir a ver a mi hijo donde lo tenían y me dijeron de que nunca más los iba a volver a ver.
I asked them to show me where they were holding my son, and they said that no, that I was not going to see him.
Luego me llevaron para un lugar donde estaba la perrera, que le dicen la perrera.
And they took me from there to a place that they call the perrera, the dog pen.
Y no supe más de mis hijos.
And I didn't hear again from my kids.
21 días después yo me enteré de ellos.
It was 21 days before I had news of them.
Y cuando yo hablé con ellos, mi hijo me dijo que ahí lo habían golpeado
talked to them, my son said that he had been hit because they didn't believe that he was really only 17 years old.
A mi nena igual, le jalaban su pelo a las 3 de la mañana para que se levantara, no la dejaban dormir.
My daughter said that they similarly that they were waking her at 3 in the morning, pulling her hair. They wouldn't let her sleep.
Ellos tenían que cuidar a otros niños más pequeños que ellos, de 2 años, estaban chiquitos.
They found that they were put in the position of taking care of even younger kids, even younger than themselves.
Y en el lugar donde yo estaba, todas, porque no solo yo, habían muchas madres llorando, preguntábamos por nuestros hijos y nos decían que ellos no sabían nada.
And like myself, the place I was being detained was full of mothers who were asking for their children and could not, we were confused answers, we were told they didn't know.
Me acuerdo que había un oficial de enojado y todo, dijo que hasta hizo así, que nuestro país con una gotita que él dejara caer lo destruía.
And another officer, I won't forget, said with just a drop that they just a little bit and it would destroy our countries.
Entonces nosotros estamos acá para que salga nuestra voz, para que salga afuera y lo escuchen todo, lo vean todo lo que pasó, lo que está pasando, cuántas madres, hablo por todas las madres que estuvimos ahí, que sufrimos, están sufriendo, fueron deportadas, sus niños creo que quedaron muchos acá.
We're here to raise our voices on behalf of so many other parents whose children went through the same experiences. We're here to so that you can hear some of what we went through.
Entonces lo que yo pido es justicia,
I ask for justice,
dignidad y respeto para nosotros porque todos somos humanos.
dignity, and respect for us because we're all human beings.
Todos tenemos un corazón y la verdad cuando le quitan a nuestros hijos pensamos que los vamos a perder. Que nunca más los iba a volver a ver, fue como un secuestro.
When they took our children from us, we thought we were not going to see them again. It was like having our children again.
Y gracias a ustedes que lo van a hacer salir al aire para que vean
So thanks to you folks, this
lo que pasamos y están pasando.
can be made visible to the public. So they know what we went through. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a los abogados, a los miembros de la prensa que nos acompañan esta tarde.
Good afternoon to the attorneys and to the journalists who accompany us this afternoon.
Mis iniciales son EO,
My initials are Yo.
soy esposo de LJ.
I am husband to LJ.
Estamos aquí para lograr sentar un precedente como víctimas de la ley tolerancia cero.
We're here to try to set a precedent and as regards the zero tolerance policy.
Somos víctimas de esa ley inhumana de la administración del presidente Trump.
We're here to speak about a policy, this inhumane policy of President Trump.
Son miles de niños separados en la frontera de sus padres, de sus madres, que ha causado llanto y dolor.
Thousands of children were separated from their parents in a practice that created all sorts of mourning and pain.
Queremos que esta ley inhumana de tolerancia cero no se repita nunca más.
We want to be sure that this policy of zero tolerance is never repeated again.
Como dijo mi esposa, tenemos un niño de 17 años y una niña que acaba de cumplir 10.
As my wife said, we have a 17-year-old son and a daughter who just actually 10.
Ellos empezaron la escuela el día de hoy, su primer día.
They started school, their first day was today.
Pero están teniendo problemas psicológicos.
But they are suffering with the psychological impact.
Fueron separados de su madre en la frontera. Ella quedó en Texas y los niños fueron trasladados a Michigan. Y en Michigan, ellos mismos, entre ellos, fueron separados a diferentes lugares.
She was held in Texas, they were transferred to Michigan, and then they were separated from one another in separate facilities.
Ellos alegan que fueron agredidos por oficiales de ICE. El niño habla que fue pateado porque el oficial no creía su edad, que él tenía 17 años.
They tell us that they were hit by ICE. My son says that he was kicked by ICE officials because they didn't believe that he was the age he said he was.
Y la niña alega que una mujer le despertaba a las 3 de la mañana para contarla y le jalaba el pelo a ella y a todo el grupo que estaba en la celda.
And my little girl says that they would wake her and the other children at 3 in the morning to wake them up pulling their hair.
Ahora sufrimos con ellos porque despiertan a las 2, 3 de la mañana llorando y ellos dicen que están soñando o tienen pesadilla de lo que les pasó en Texas.
They wake at 2, 3 in the morning and say that they have nightmares of what happened to them in detention.
Yo como padre ya estaba aquí, pero igual he sufrido mucho, no me da vergüenza decirlo, soy hombre, pero cuando no encontraba a mi esposa, que ICE no le permitió llamar por 9 días, y los niños separados, yo lloraba.
Even though I was here, I was not in detention. Nonetheless, I have to say I'm a man, but when the 9 days before I was able to speak to my wife in detention, and when I couldn't speak to my kid, I was crying.
Fueron días terribles para mí. No dormía y no comía. Yo me iba a la iglesia, me ponía a orar y yo también lloraba.
Those were really hard days. I would go to the church and pray and cry.
Fueron momentos difíciles que me tocó vivir como padre, casi 2 meses, luchando por recuperar mi familia, por mis hijos y por mi esposa.
Those were days struggling to recover contact and the liberty for my wife and my children.
Estamos pues aquí para hablar por las madres que sufren, por los niños que han sido separados y por esos niños que están sufriendo una psicosis y que ahora necesitan de un tratamiento psicológico producto de la tolerancia cero.
We're here to speak for the women and the children, for what they went through, for these kids and families who suffered the repercussions of the zero tolerance policy.
Quiero terminar diciendo que estamos aquí para pedir justicia, para sentar un precedente, para que esto no se repita.
We are here to ask that to set a precedence, that zero tolerance not be repeated. We are here to ask for justice.
Y también para decirle a la administración de gobierno que es su responsabilidad y su obligación reparar el daño psicológico de todos los niños.
We're here also to tell this government that it's their responsibility to repair the damage they have done to these children.
Muchas gracias a ustedes de la prensa por el acompañamiento que nos ha dado y por el apoyo. Gracias.
Thanks to all of you in the press for the accompaniment you have given us in this process and for your attention.
Okay, if there are a few questions you have to answer, I will just say one ground rule is there are certain matters related to different pending legal matters for these individuals that may put a few things off limits, but let's deal with it on a question-by-question basis.
Could you just clarify, all of these parents had their children, reunified, and then reunified with their children?
These individuals, yes.
How many do you estimate now still need to be reunited facilities, detention facilities?
Right now, the number is there's over 520 children who have not been reunited. Out of those 520, approximately 360.
Sorry, could you just go to the apologies?
Right now, there are over 520 children who have not been reunited with their parents. About approximately 360 of those are parents who have been deported. So that reunification process is ongoing with people literally walking the hills of different countries trying to locate parents by word of mouth. The rest of the parents are being withheld reunification. For example, I worked with one lawyer who adopted the child legally under every legal procedure that was available in their home country, but they failed the DNA test because they're the adopted parent. And there's, so there are issues like that that are holding up the other 100 or so, not great at math, but reunifications.
You're asking for financial compensation. Is there a rough estimate of exactly how much?
So there are two primary but not exclusive aspects of damage that the plaintiffs in this case will be looking for. One is the establishment of a program to evaluate, monitor, and treat the children from a mental health perspective. We have been and will be working with experts to figure out what's needed for that particular model, that particular program. Obviously, there are a very large number of children involved here. We don't have a figure, but as part of the damages that we will be pursuing, that will be given detailed and specifics in the course of the litigation. The other aspect of this is that each child and proposed class member is seeking their own damages for their own emotional distress. And what someone's emotional distress under these circumstances is worth will ultimately be for a jury to decide.
Could this be hundreds of millions, possibly? Or millions?
That seems perfectly reasonable at this point.
What has been so difficult? You described a little bit about the difficulties that families who've gone through this have had finding mental health therapy treatment. What are some of the obstacles that they face?
So my office represents 5 separate families, and the first obstacle is that by and large these families are not entitled to any form of health care or health insurance. And the second obstacle is transportation. Most of these families are not allowed to have, all of these families are not allowed driver's licenses, so they cannot purchase cars and drive legally. So if a provider, and the third obstacle is language. There are significant language barriers in finding different psychiatrists and psychologists or even a social worker. So the trifecta of the problems prevents them from accessing a certified professional unless it's very close to home and it speaks their language. Financial resources will obviously greatly assist with that, with allowing transportation, expanding the providers that are willing to do it versus having to rely, which is what we are right now, on pro bono assistance for, which means free or no cost assistance for psychologists that speak the language that the family can get to back and forth.
How long in the case of these families were they separated?
In the case of FC, sorry, I'm not good with the acronyms yet. In the case of FC, it was June 20th until July 26th. And in the case of EO and LJ, it was 2 months, approximately 2 months, right?
Beginning when?
Their dates are May. It was May to a reunion in late June. Let me check.
18th of May.
Uh-huh.
Ya,
Ahí cuando se reunieron.
el 27 de julio.
27th of July.
So May 18th to July 26th, June right? Not July.
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 27th.
July?
July.
Okay, July 27th.
So,
Yeah.
the mental health care that the children are subject to and the damage and the difficulty in getting them. So at Jeff Goldman Immigration, we actually set up a charitable organization because getting them health care and even under Mass Health is not provided because they have no lawful status. And yet they had suffered so much when they were released, they were given an exit form, but they had said, hey, we've received shots or other types of medicines, and obviously as a parent, who we also, they want to know what was it put in their children. And so at our shop, we've tried to do what we can, but it's extremely difficult. I think you hit on a very good issue, and that's why it was a catalyst for us to start talking about solutions.
Is it fair to say that these parents are undocumented immigrants?
No, it's not actually.
We just clarify their
That term
status.
drives me absolutely crazy.
What is the term you'd like for us to use?
There really is no specific term. So all of these parents in some way or another are applicants for asylum, and or asylum seekers. Undocumented is somebody, I would say, who has no access to the system, is not in the system, the government doesn't know about them, is trying to hide, or has been already ordered removed and has no other forms of relief. So these individuals are asylum seekers, yet our laws do not allow them to obtain employment authorization, obtain driver's license, access health care, access any sort of benefits, despite the common belief about what goes on in there. There's almost nothing available to them, even though they're lawfully pursuing their rights in the system.
They presented themselves at the border seeking asylum.
So both of these individuals presented themselves to Border Patrol officials, but not at a recognized entry point because the government is currently blocking the recognized entry points to access asylum applications. So both of them, if you read their, if you read the complaint, one family, the LEO family, walked for 4.5 to 5 hours seeking a Customs and Border Patrol officer, looking for someone in broad daylight. FC walked in broad daylight. This was not in the middle of the night trying to evade detection, and found a Border Patrol officer shortly after arriving and presented himself.
They're not facing any criminal charges.
FC went through the criminal process, so he did get prosecuted under the unlawful entry. The other family did not. And most of the families I represent have not been prosecuted.
In the lawsuit, there was a description of a 5-year-old child who was breastfeeding.
Yeah, that was client Diago, who is now in Philadelphia, who spent over 40 days in Los Angeles while his mother was released in Philadelphia. And I personally went down to Philadelphia and met with him, and it was unbelievable. And that behavior was something I saw, and he also acted as an officer. And tried to arrest me when I walked in, then he hid in the closet. And so and Susan can speak to this, having lived through this is something that, again, provided a catalyst for further action here. The damage is unbelievable, and the focus has been on the unification because, of course, the judge has ordered that, right? We've had a class action that has said unified, but now it's about it's restoration. And that is something the government is not taking responsibility for, but so desperately needs to be done, and we're here to make sure that happens.
Is it fair to say many of the people who crossed the border were not only asylum seekers, but were undocumented as well? You're representing everyone, right? All parents and children.
The children, yes.
Okay.
And as Susan hit on, so you just can't show up and say, let me stay. You have to pass a screening. And by and large, the clients that I represent all pass that screening. And yet, we're still either prosecuted and most definitely separated. And not just for a few days, we're talking months. And again, 5-year-old to 17-year-old, anyone, and the problem is they treated these children as orphaned, although they came with their lawful parents. So by and large.
We understand that the Trump administration today has announced that it will no longer be bound by the Flores settlement. How will that, what is your reaction to that, and how will that affect your case?
second. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I think it's important to emphasize that the root of this lawsuit is, we think, the demonstrable fact that what was done here was intentional. The idea was to inflict harm on these families and their children in order to deter lawful immigration. So when I read the same news story as you did with regard to the announced intent to walk away from the Flores settlement, it's hard for me to understand by what legal authority the government thinks it can walk away from a court-approved consent decree, but I think it's probably noteworthy that it's consistent with a president who seems not to believe in the rule of law, or at least that he is bound by it. So I think that it will be cited by us in this case as yet another example where government officials are just ignoring the law.
What is the status, again, of these parents up here? What, are they in limbo? What are they waiting for? Where, you don't have, obviously, we're not saying they're going to be held, but what can we report?
So all of them have cases that are making their way through the courts at this time.
And are they staying with relatives or friends? Are there agencies helping them?
I actually don't want to address too much personal situation, but they are getting a lot of help from Metro West Worker Center, where both of these interpreters are here from today. So, and community people have banded together to help them also.
I have a question for the parents then. If they were to do this over again, do they have any regrets? Will they do it again? Would they make the same attempt after, despite everything that they've gone through?
Lily, can you come up with it, please?
So the question again is, if they knew this is what they were going to face, would they have made this attempt?
No, I would not do it. Because it was a psychological trauma that very strong that my children and I have suffered.
And the Attorney General announced the zero tolerance policy in April, and you said that you crossed May 18th. Did you have any idea? I think you said you had no idea that your family would be separated. How did you not know that zero tolerance was in effect?
I think we're not gonna, I don't want to get too far into that because there's a lot of other legal issues with regard to that, so I'm going to ask that she not answer that question, if that's okay.
Can you answer it on her behalf? Because she said she had no idea that she would be
I won't answer
separated.
specific to her, but I will answer that there's not the same access to media in these countries that there is here. It's really not, it's not a simple question as to, they don't watch CNN every night. People live very different lives from what we do, so it's not common knowledge that it happens there, from my understanding, but that's not on her behalf.
Other questions? Not, thank you all for coming. And we will